Hi guys, my name's Mary Thayer. I'm an alcoholic and terribly filled with being here in Santa Fe with the allergies. So, Danny, I couldn't be more privileged to introduce him. It's, uh, I think I actually, when he first came in is when I first met Danny. I still have a picture of him. How long ago it was before Tom and Juana had built that amazing home that they now live in. And they lived in a manufactured home at that time. And I remember driving in the driveway and Danny was standing on their porch. And that was the day I met him. And I was going to school in just north of Santa Fe here, studying death and dying and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's Institute. And Tom I had just met and was working with, and there was Danny. And from the very beginning, Danny had what I like, an open soul. He really wanted to know what was going on with these 12 steps. And I had the privilege to see him grow in this program. Then he moved away. But I'm really blessed because a couple of years ago, he was in Florida and he was in Orlando and I was in Tampa, and we each drove an equal distance just to sit and talk and catch up. One of the things that I've realized in this program is that I don't have to see a lot of you people every day or anything, but the minute we sit down and start talking, it's just as if we've been with each other the whole time, because this is a language of the heart. And great privilege to introduce you to Danny. Love you, Danny.
Love you too. Thank you, Mary Thayer. Well, I'm Danny Charlton and I'm an alcoholic. And Sam wrote Manado, Indonesia, which is where my wife is from and where we live most of the time. But I come to you now from Bali. Our kids are in school down here, and I'm here for a couple more days before I head back to Bali. Now, it may be hard to hear me right now. It hasn't rained in Bali in a month, and it just started raining. So I could run back into the house, but I'd have to jump on another connection. Can y'all hear me okay? Sam, is it coming through okay?
Yeah, man, coming through good.
It's gonna stop soon. Maybe give you a little look of the tropical rain here. Yeah, so what I thought I would do is Manado, Indonesia. I doubt many of you know where that is, so I have a little map with me to show you the country, okay? And Bali is right here. That's where I'm at right now. The equator, I had that line going across there. Manado is where the red dot is, up on that funny looking island up there that looks sort of like a giraffe. This yellow star here, actually I wasn't gonna say it, but now that Sam said he's a scuba diver, this yellow star is really the epicenter of where coral life began on the planet. And my wife's father was a medical doctor, and he actually he's passed on. He is the pioneer of scuba diving in North Sulawesi up in Manado here. And it's funny where God has placed me. So I'm just making up that some of you think, well, how can this guy living in paradise really be an alcoholic? So I thought maybe I should start by just qualifying a little bit. Grew up in New Jersey, third kid of 6. You know, when it talks about this Jekyll and Hyde in the book, I really related to that. You know, I was at the time the county's youngest outstanding 4-H'er. I was a paper boy, and I really learned how to get around your house and break into your house and rip you off. And I've always had this, what I felt I was inside, and what I wanted to show you on the outside. And that's drunk or sober before getting, it's been with me my whole thing. And it's something that I continually work on. And I really appreciate, Mary, what you're saying, that I'm, want to be open. And, I'm a crier, so I got some tissues here. And I'm a seeker. So, I'll just quickly digress and talk about a couple of the amends that I made for these neighbors. One, they were so kind to give me this job of weeding and taking care of their gardens. And I don't know how, but I just found it up into their master bedroom and into their cash box several times. And they lived in the posh part of town. And when I finally tracked Mrs. McGuigan down to make amends for that, I had the money, I had the interest. Man, she was living in a trailer park. And when I went to give her her money back, she could care less what I did. You know what she said? "Oh my gosh, I had no idea how I was going to make this month's rent. Thank you so much." And another neighbor, Mrs. Lang, and I know they had a rough marriage and the husband had run away and stuff like that, and didn't stop me from continuously going in and forging checks and this and that. And I was in Santa Fe, just finished working some stuff with Tom, driving up to Denver. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I got to make right by this." Mrs. Lang, she wasn't on my list before. Go up to stay with my brother, and he opens up the door. He says, "You can't believe who just contacted me, Kurt Lang." And so I was able to make right on that through Facebook. They got in touch. I was able to, and at the beginning of COVID, another one just came up of something that I was involved in that I had conveniently tucked away for years and years and years. And, I rang Tom, "How can I ever make good?" He says, "God is going to show you how to make good on this." And sure enough, I'm making strides, contacting the township that it happened in and so forth and so on. And hopefully that'll be done and dusted when I'm back in the States again. None of that makes me an alcoholic. But one little story is 17 years old. One of my father's best friends had 2 liquor stores, offered me a job, start on a Saturday morning. Last thing he said, "Don't be late. Don't be late. No matter what, don't be late." I wasn't going to go out that night. There was nothing that was going to get me out that night because I knew what was going to happen. Well, sure enough, I go out that night. Gary Gersel gave me a call and said, "You got to come out." Get home, I remember looking at the clock. It was 4:10 in the morning. And I'm like, "Oh man, it happened again." Of course, my car didn't start. I had to ride my bike. It was 5 miles actually. And I'm cursing myself the entire time. Completely out of my mind. Hating myself. How did this happen? I swore I wasn't going to go out. Get there. I'm late. Thankfully, Stan wasn't around. Snuck by that one. Okay. Dodge that bullet. Go out and take some deliveries, and I'm completely out of my mind. Get back to the back of the liquor store, and I'm total cotton mouth, completely parched. And there was a white plastic container on the shelf in the back there, in the back room. And I look in, and it was orange juice. I'm 17 years old. It's 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. Orange juice, need it. Started drinking right out of the container. There were cups next to it. And oh my gosh, guess what else was in that orange juice? I'm like, hair of the dog. I've got no problems. This is the solution. And yeah, I just, so by the time I sobered in Santa Fe, I was 30 years old. Through high school, I had lots of trouble, and it took me 5 years and 4 different high schools. Did a geographic out to Arizona, started going to school. College, I did get through college. It took me 8 or 9 years to get through, and cheated a lot. ended up in Santa Fe, and I had, you know, an internship. And I grew up, my father had a small hobby farm, so we knew how to work. And, you know, all through this time, I've taken hostages for places to stay in Arizona, and, you know, and so forth and so on. Never able to get my act together. Up in Santa Fe doing this internship, and I didn't have any money to keep staying in this little tiny room in the south part of town. And so I did have a motorcycle, getting around, no place to go. For some reason, the company I was doing the internship with entrusted me with a key to this back office. And so I was held up there, living like a scared dog underneath this desk. And the place had a shower, so I was able to sneak around, take a shower in the morning, and present to you, I'm ready to work. I'm ready to go. And through the kindness of a man there that I had tried calling, because I knew he had rooms for let. His last name was Kinsey, and I was always trying to look it up, Kinsey, and it just came to me, well, why don't you look it up in the phone book, Cey? And I did. And after a few nights in that office on the floor, I rang him up, and he took me in. And I said, I don't have any money. And he said, don't worry, when you get the money, you pay me. And that was shortly before I got sober. So I got sober in Santa Fe, and didn't say anything, didn't do anything after, but I knew something was there. And at the meeting, there was a guy named Don. And at every meeting that I went to, he seemed to be there. And at every meeting, he seemed to say two things, that they were looking for guys to go out one night a week to the penitentiary, and a small group of guys met at the Friendship Club there, and they drive out together. And then he'd say how happy he was that he moved from his van into a trailer. And I'd say to myself, man, if I could just get that van, I could live in that van, I'd be set. And you know, I was there because I was confused. My mind wouldn't shut up. I didn't know where to go. I had no direction. And who knows, maybe later in life, I'm gonna want a van and sleep in a van. There's nothing wrong with sleeping in a van and living in a van if that's where God wants me to go. But at the time, it was like my only out. Now, the thing is, I was staying with this guy, Herb Kinsey, who had a beautiful house, but I always wanted something else. I was always looking for the next thing. And I continue to do that. And through pause and the steps and this fellowship, I'm able to slow down and say, I'm here right now, and it's okay. So, you know, I think I'm in the hospitality business. We have scuba diving resorts. It's been a tough couple of years through this COVID. We're doing okay. We'll be fine. But I think one of the reasons why I'm pretty good at what I do, it's not for the fancy education or anything like that. It's school of hard knocks, yeah. But I think because of the house that I grew up in, there was violence, there was a lot going on, and you always had to be on. You know, I could tell by the footsteps of my father the mood he was in. I could tell what's going to go on. And so I was always on. And you know, in hospitality, you kind of have to be on all the time. And so in 2018, I took my oldest daughter, we did around the States. All right, here's the first one. So we're in Santa Fe. And I pull up to that office of where I was held up. I said, you know, I told Lexi what was going on with me then. And I said, do you want to go have a look? And she's in the car. She's like, no, why would I want to do that? And I knew at that moment she could not believe her father was ever in that type of situation. And so, you know, I hear this, that you know, we either recover or we repeat. And I'm happy to say that, you know, my kids, they don't live and they're not scared. They don't live in fear. Their home is a place of love. It's a place of comfort. You know, if you take a drone, I used to say you take a helicopter, but if you take a drone above our house, yeah, you're going to see me get angry at times. And anger is a big thing in my life. It's one of the, yeah, we'll talk about it maybe in a bit. You're gonna see us pray as a family. You're gonna see my kids. Yeah, sometimes maybe they're a little scared to come up to their poppy and talk to them, but they're not afraid of me. Just the kids were studying for the twins. We have, yeah, so I'm happily married, super happily married, 21 years. I love my wife more now than when we met. Got 3 beautiful kids, 19, and then boy-girl twins that are 15. I mean, what the heck, right? And we're in the scuba diving business. Do you want to come over and see what yellow is? I'll show you. I mean, what God has given us underwater is absolutely amazing. I'll get lost in what I think my job is, and I think that bougainville needs to be moved 2 feet to the left. And I need to school our gardener on the finer points of landscape architecture, of which I know nothing about. I forget what really my purpose is. It's easy for me to forget. So the other day, kids are studying, and really proud of them. They're studying super hard. My daughter, the twin daughter, was having a tough time through COVID. She had a spell of some depression, a little bit of self-harm. She was reaching out. She's super good now. She studied like crazy. But, you know, my plan one afternoon is let them study, and then we go for a bike ride, freshen things up, and come back. And that was my plan. And that's what we did. Well, come to find out, they were not so happy with that, because I broke up their study routine, and my wife talked to me, and I could listen to my wife and hear what she's saying about this. And so, you know, maybe some of it was they were trying to weasel out of getting some exercise, but the point being, the next morning we talked about it. I was taking them to school in the car, and I said, you guys, let's come up with a signal so I know it's something important for you to talk about. And we talked about that, and they practiced it in the car. And, you know, so the point being is my kids are super healthy, and God knows where they're going to be 10 years from now, but they're on a really good, solid footing. And mostly thanks to my wife, you know, and so anyway, how'd I get to Bali? Sober a couple years. You know, I met Tom through those guys that were going out to the pen. They said, hey, why don't you come out, and they're doing a big book study. So there's some months into this, and I met Tom, you know, through the big book, and I hadn't known anything about it. It was many months into the program, and I knew something was there, but yeah. So I'm at it. I you know, moved up in the job, stayed at that job. They liked me, I liked them, and I actually put together something that was new to the company, and something that they were trying. It had to do with partnerships and so forth. And I was instrumental in putting this thing together. And we're up on a we're up in Utah and doing this program. And I did not think that the supplier was doing their job right. You know, that line in the book that Bill says, I proved to the world that I was important. Man, I get that. And that gets me into a lot of trouble. You add to that the demands and the demand for control, and my dependency on this going exactly according to plan. And if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, there's going to be an
This
issue.
meeting is being recorded.
So I let that supplier know that he was wrong. And he fired off a fax to a senior VP. Well, senior VPs in headquarters don't like having faxes come across their desk like that. And I remember Tom saying to me, he said, hey, you know, before you went and spoke to him, what would it have looked like had you gone into the bathroom and got on your knees and asked God to help you out with this one? You know, I get on my knees in bathrooms all over, and I'm not ashamed of it. And when I don't invite God into a situation and I take only Danny into it, man, you know, more often than not, I really wish I had brought God into it. So that wasn't the nail in the coffin, but an opportunity came up to move to Bali to help start a rafting company. And I knew that this senior VP was not going to let me move up in the ranks. Plus, they wanted me to transfer to Minneapolis and that wasn't going to work. But I was really torn between coming here and so forth. And Tom at the New Mexico State Convention, he suggested that I speak with Don Pritz, and I had known Don, and Don had helped me in things previously, and of course, I love Don. And so I explained Don the situation. And by the way, Tom could tell this story much better than I can. But Don asked me a couple of 3 questions. Well, are there meetings over there? And we did find out there were a couple of meetings on Bali at the time. I'll have you know that now, well, not due to COVID, there's many meetings all over the island, all over the country now. And we have a roundup every year, and it's in June. So he asked me if there are meetings. Yes. He asked me if I was in a relationship, and I was not. And then he says, and you do have a job here? You do? And I said, yes. And Don said, well, Danny, you know, God's either on Bali or he's not. And I suggest you go on over there and try to find out if he's there or not. And you know, the funny thing is, the tagline, one of the nicknames for Bali is the island of the gods. And God is here and God is thriving. So I arrive on Bali to completely new smells, completely different way. They drive on the incorrect side of the street. Bathrooms, everything was completely different. But you know, I'm here and I'm proving to the world that I'm important. And took me some time to finally do a 4-step here. And I conveniently, and it was the 5th step promises came true, but there was something missing. And I conveniently passed over the sex inventory. The guy I was working with, you know, we kind of did it and this and that, but I knew it wasn't right. And my behavior towards women was absolutely horrible, horrendous. And you know, even it is what it is. It's my story. Even after meetings, I would go and to a whorehouse, and I was just left absolutely gutless, absolutely void of yeah. I would take a drink over that any day, the way I felt. So finally, with Tom, we dug into this sex inventory, and I wrote it out, and I asked the questions, and I made some amends, and I got clarity, and clear as a bell, some I just stayed away from. And I wrote out, you know, what is my, and I knew what I wanted. I was clear. I was clear. And I kid you not, some months later, I met the girl in my dreams that I had wrote out. This is what, and she's there. We've been married 21 years. And why I'm emotional is because I don't always treat her like the girl of my dreams. I aspire to that. I want to do that, but I don't know. I fall short again and again. But something important about this inventory and doing this inventory is that I could speak to my children now openly because I know the direction and I know where God wants me in this. And I practice that prayer that leaves us at the end of the 4th step there. And I practice that when I divert, I practice that and I do it, and it absolutely works. The other important thing is that I help a lot of guys through this and get clarity with themselves. And there's times where they're doing it, maybe they're laughing at some of their, and I'm like, dude, if you want to laugh about this, if you think this funny, you got the wrong guy. There ain't nothing funny about this. We want to get clarity here. Do you want to get clarity here or not? Do you want to move on or not? And yeah. So I'm up in Monado and there's no meetings there. And I'm going through, but I got that thing that I got to prove, I got that thing, now here's working for the Pioneer Scuba Diving, who's on their first resort, started that resort because he's a medical doctor and he had a patient that didn't have money to pay him for his services and the services of his family. And they gave him basically a marsh. And he turned that into a coconut farm. And through that the proceeds from those coconuts, he built a dive resort. And through that dive resort, he opened up scuba diving in this part of the world to the rest of the world. And here I am, newly married. They're not doing it right. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. Don't they know who I am? Well, so one day, my wife's brother wakes up and he says, I'm going to go after Danny with a machete. He just woke up and, I wasn't doing nothing wrong. Well, I'm innocent. I'm clear. Man, what a journey that was. And for a couple years, this man completely occupied my mind, occupied my head. Finally, when I did the 4-step on this, I incorporated the questions into the sex inventory, and every single defect I went through and I wanted to know why, and I wrote it out. What could I have done differently? On, and I wrote this out, and I wrote this out, and I wrote this out. Flew down to Bali and got with my sponsor. It took a day to get through this. That what the biggest thing I found out was jealousy. I was jealous of this guy. I was jealous, because of that false dependence, that demand that he should be different. So you can imagine the split I put in the family. And so when it was time to make amends, I first went to my mother-in-law. Now, by now, Paul had moved on. He'd gotten a divorce, he moved on, and he started down a path, his own path of, it wasn't healthy. When I went to make amends to my mother-in-law, and I had been told the proper way to make amends, I had my card, I went through it. I knew that she loved me. I knew that. And when the question came, Mom, I'll do anything to set this straight. Now, Paul is my mother's only son. What she said, Danny, stop talking about my son. Stop talking bad about my son. And I knew right there that that was a sacred vow. When someone tells me what I need to do to stop this behavior and to make things right, that is sacred to me. And I stopped. People would ask me, see, what I had done was I got everybody on my team. People who had known the family from all over the world, who saw Paul grow up as a small kid, from all over the world, who I got on my side against that side. There's a lot of damage there. So then when they started asking me, so what's up with you and Paul? I say, well, you know what? You'll need to ask Paul. Well, where is he now? Well, I think he's over there, but you can talk to Mom. Or you could talk to Angela. And I did it without rancor. Absolutely without rancor. So a trip I had come down to Bali, catch up with the crew, and went to a meeting in the morning. Had some work to do, went to a cafe, got out my laptop, was ready to do some work, and all of a sudden, who's there? Paul. We talked. He bought me breakfast. And at the end, we hugged. And I don't know what was going through in his mind, but I'm pretty sure it was the same as mine. And that the only thing was love. And that was it, love. Now, I don't know what's going on with my laptop. I will have to log in with my phone. I'm going to run out of battery. So forgive me for that. I'm really sorry. Join. No, my history's clear. Shoot, what's the code for this meeting again? Sam,
186, 186,
Yep.
366, 430.
Okay, let me join. I'm going to shut this off. Sorry, guys. Let me just make sure I get on. It's waiting.
Make sure Street lets you in. He can be selective sometimes.
Yeah, let me move over. Yeah, I really apologize for this. I'm going to move over to my office. Sorry, it may, oh, here we go.
I'm seeing you great.
Yeah.
Seeing and hearing you great.
Good. All right, I'm going to leave this one so it doesn't screw it up.
I think our speakers bounced. Chris, if Danny's trying to log in.
Yeah, he's in. I'll let him in.
Okay. Danny, you there?
You gotta unmute.
How about now? We good?
All right. There
Yeah,
you go.
So it would be so nice if that was the end of the Paul story, but unfortunately it's not. Some years passed. He did something absolutely horrible to my wife, and my son was a witness. My mother-in-law was a witness. I wasn't around. And it was the last straw for my wife. And sure enough, I began to gossip again about him. I began to talk about him. And I just felt dirty, really dirty. And a couple of weeks into it, I stopped. No, my mother-in-law didn't say stop talking about my son. Unless he does this. There was no unless, there was no but. Stop. And I stopped, and it began to turn again. My wife went on a fast during this situation, and we got through it. I went up to my father-in-law's grave during that time just to try to get some peace, just to try to make sense of it all. And I got quiet and I meditated. And you know what came back? He said, be patient. It's gonna be okay. And you know what? It is okay. And I'm not gonna say Paul and I are best friends today, but we have mutual respect for each other. I'm okay when he's around my kids now. And I love him. I try to support him. And you know what's pretty cool? The family, when there's stuff going on and they need help, they call me. They call me, and I'm there to help them. And I'm the one trying to, you know, it's pretty cool. So, you know, here I am up there. Y'all think I'm living in paradise and I'm a loner, and there'd be guests that would come and, oh man, this is just paradise, you know, and I'd say it on my breath, you know, paradise. I ain't living in no paradise. What are you talking about? And I'm really, you know, suffering from untreated alcoholism. It was exactly what was going on. And, you know, on the bottom of page, what Bill writes on the bottom of 14, top of 15, you know, I failed to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice of others. I wasn't self-sacrificing to nobody. Sure, I'd come down to Bali and grab meetings and head into Jakarta or Singapore or whatever. But it's not the same as being selfless to others. So we're on vacation down on Bali. I'm gonna go up to the Ubud meeting, and my twin daughter, who at the time, I don't know, she's 8 years old. She wants to go see her best friend. So okay, we go together. And on Bali, on a lot of side streets, they have these 90-degree dog angle turns. And they believe it's to ward off the evil spirit so the spirit gets lost. So I'm with my daughter, and she's talking. One of the most favorite things for me to do in the world is to listen to her. She's so vibrant and alive and just excited about everything. And she's going on. We go around one of these dog turns, and there's a storefront on the left. And I look over to the left. She's sitting on the right. I look over to the left, and I say to myself, when is this all going to end? I just want out. 21 years sober. And so get up to the meeting, and thank God my sponsor was there. And a couple other people that really loved me. And there was another guy there, Bill Connolly. And I just let it out. I cried. What was I going? I'm done holding on to. I'm done. And if I can't speak safely and get over my ego that this shouldn't be happening to someone who's 20, you know, it's just a load of nonsense. I was told early on by the person who got me into the program, you know, Danny, you're not special. You're not, and it wasn't that I'm not a special person, but what's happened to me is not special. There's others there. And one of the most beautiful things of sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous is being able to identify with, oh my God, I did exactly like that. And so if I can't be true and honest and open when necessary in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm really screwed. So it was suggested to me, and I did it a couple of days after, is get on a suicide hotline. And you talk about people who give of themselves. Oh. So, you know, I'm happy to report that I'm okay. I don't have any of that now. Does some depression come through? Yeah. Am I you know, yeah, it does. And I reach out and I pray. So, but I knew that I needed to get back to meetings, and I also knew that I wanted to put the kids into a better school system than what we have up in Monado. So bought a house in Denver, and that was the plan. You know, that was the plan. That was my plan. We're moving to Denver. My wife never wanted to go. And about 2 years prior, and just the stress and so forth, and we had a guest leaving the resort in tears because of how I treated her. Now, I can get you on my side and say, yeah, but you know, they did this and they deserved it. And you would agree with me. But that's not what it says for me to do. So I really started digging into meditation. And a few days into it, and I've got a spot for meditation. Come and visit, man. It's incredible. But river down below, birds chirping, the whole thing in a jungle. And a voice came to me. And God said, you know, you can just move to Bali. You don't have to move to Denver. I don't want to hear that. I have a plan. Next day, you know, Bali's got good schools and there's a great fellowship and you know them all. All right. So I ring up Tom, ring up my sponsor, ring up some others. I don't talk to my wife about this because I don't want to give her an out. She don't want to move to the States. Finally did, and she got on her knees. She said, thank God, you know. So, you know, what do I know? We moved down to Bali. They're in a wonderful school system here. Yeah. So during COVID, it's been a super difficult time. And I had planned on a Monday that we're going to have a series of meetings at the resort. I asked my wife on a Wednesday or Thursday. She said yes. I got up early on that Monday. I was into prayer and meditation for 45 minutes to an hour. I go to the resort. Now, my wife has an issue with being on time. Okay, that's her issue, and I've made it my issue. And very important that she's on time for these meetings. This is the management meeting. Very, very important that she's on time. Well, you know, she's not on time. And on the phone, I say to her, now bear in mind what I said, she grew up on this property. I said to her, I forbid you for coming down to this meeting now because you are late. I forbid you to come to your own house, basically is what I said. Now, unbeknownst to me, the power went out. We had a problem with the generator. Kids' first day of school, they can't get on online learning, on and on. Well, lo and behold, my wife didn't come home that night. The first time in our marriage. Knock wood, it's our last time. Next morning, sleepless night, of course. Next morning, I'm doing the 11th step as outlined in the big book. And it came to me. You see, and I often do, and obviously I did it that night, I often do the nightly a written 11th step at night to make my plans for the next day. And those are my plans. And so I go into God please divorce my thinking from the plans that I divorce it from selfishness, self-seeking thing, dishonest of my plan that I have made. And it came to me as I'm doing it. Wait a minute. Maybe this says before I make my plan, I bring God into it. Before I make my plan, see, I had been going at it like, here's my plan, God, divorce my thinking from selfishness and self-seeking and fear, dishonesty. So it just flipped it around there. But, you know, my demand for control, my demand for my plans, man, it helps, it falls short all the time. And I'm happy to say that I'm really super aware of this now, doing a lot of work around it. I started to go through the book again with a friend of Tom's and now a friend of mine from Australia. And you know, what's coming to me more and more is loving others. Love others, no matter what. I'll just end on on this, and it's a little dramatic, but I like drama. And as Mary Thayer said, I open my soul. I believe for me that AA has trained me to be a better person, trained me to be the person that God wants me to be, because I cannot do it myself. So several years ago, after the machete thing, before the really bad thing, it's a Saturday morning. I'm driving through the small little road. It's just a 1-lane road to get to the resort. And, you know, the houses are very, very close to each other here. People live in very close proximity to each other. And just some yards off the road, there's a kid who's actually named after Paul. His name was Paul, and he's the son of a friend of ours. They were working for us, and the kid was 12, 13 at the time. And I looked over at him. I'm coming down the road, and I had a lot going on this day. You know, I'm full on into Danny, and I'm full on into, you know, don't you see who I am? And I look over at the kid, and he just looked miserable. And I had heard that he wasn't doing so good. He's fighting with his mother and stuff like that. And I just thought, stupid kid. And I just brushed past and walked past him. Didn't even think to roll down the window and say, hey, how you doing? I saw that, you know, I've known the kid since he was 2. That night, against his father's wishes, he nicked the keys of the motorbike and came on head on to a bus and was killed. You know, now I am not of any delusion that had I stopped and bought him an ice cream or just, you know, brought him down to the resort to hack around for a bit, he'd be here today. No, but I do know this. I was not practicing these principles. I was not showing love and tolerance and patience and kindness. I was nowhere near that. So fast forward just recently, a sponsee I was up in Monado, and a sponsee had flown up to go through his 4th and 5th step. And it was just a fantastic bunch of days strung together. And I took our carpenter from the resort up to our house to show him some stuff. And I had a lot to do that day. I was flying back to Bali the next day, end. But I knew the guy, and it was a great time with he and I. He and I hadn't spent time talking together, and we talked about his kid, and I asked how his kid is doing, and it was really wonderful. And he's a very simple guy. And I knew the guy had gout. It wasn't flared up right now, but I could drop him off a 1/4 mile at the top of the road, or I could bring him down into the resort, which I chose to do. And I let him off, and I said, okay, now I have to go back. And he looked at me and said, boy, you didn't have to do that. I said, yeah, but it's been nice talking to you. And, you know, I know what you're from, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, thank you very much. And I went on my way. Sorry, but good Lord, the next day, he gets in a motorbike wreck. I was killed. Now, it's the same road, same Danny, What's the difference? The difference is that work is selfless work, and work and self-sacrifice with others puts me in a completely different state of mind, you know? And but I do just want to tell one last story. So it wasn't all bad, of course, during that period of time when I was disconnected. The U.S. Embassy, they had a program up in Manado, and I had the privilege of taking the U.S. ambassador out diving with his chief of security. And the first time, man, we absolutely nailed it, and just nailed it. To die, it was dolphin, it was magnificent, just completely nailed it. And then he came up again for the event, and the whole event was around diving. And so the chief of security was asking me some things. Is this safe? You know, we want to do the pop. And again, a great day. And that day he got to ride with my father-in-law. And it was just wonderful seeing these two old salts get into it. And at the end of the program, the chief of security said to me, he said, you know, you have a friend in the ambassador. You can reach out when you like. And I was like, just like, how does that happen? A low down scumbag who steals from his neighbors, does horrible things to women. How does that turn around? Well, you know, it does turn around. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, through all that time, I just hung in there. I'd get on the phone, you know, it's the internet connections weren't good. So Skype meetings weren't working. I made 1,000 excuses and this and that and the other thing. But I much prefer immersing myself in the work and immersing myself in helping others, bringing guys and gals and talking about the steps in the community of alcoholics. Much prefer that to being on my own any day. And I think I've gone way over. Sorry, Sam, and sorry about the connection. And
no, man, that was beautiful. You did just fine. We didn't matter how many. I mean, you've got another 25 minutes if you want, buddy. That was beautiful. And you know what's really funny to me is that what always shows up in this essay for me, and what always shows up with somebody who's kind of in tune with it, is that the, you know, perfecting and enlarging our spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, the conduit of unconditional love, and then meditation. I mean, those are the things that always have to keep continuing to happen for me. Because it's amazing how the spiritual malady shows up in the mind of an alcoholic who's been sober 20, 25 years, 30 years, 15 years, who's, you know, not working with anybody. And doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter who you're married. You could marry your dream girl, living in the best place ever, have tons of money, and be the most restless shithead on the planet, you know, just completely dissatisfied and almost on the verge of suicide. And the only thing that's doing that is the stuff that's showing up in my head, you know? So it's amazing what it takes to keep us on the rails. And then when we are on the rails, how beautiful it can be. So thank you so much, Danny. So would you pick a couple people the way that we usually do this? You've been on here several times. Pick on a couple people, then we'll open it up.
Well, of course, I'd like to hear from Mary Thayer, and I'd also like to hear, I saw Gary Brown on.
Okay.
And and thank you.
All right, well, let's do Mary Thayer.
Ladies first.
Yeah.
Thanks, Danny. Mary Thayer, alcoholic. I was just thinking about when you were talking about how when I came in, you know, I think like all of us, we're just a wreck, you know, we believe our own stories. We think we know everything, and it's just interesting. And I had sponsorship that was just dynamite. And I remember my sponsor would say to me all the time, why don't you stop doing the things that hurt you? And that was like, what? I mean, and I couldn't. You see, lack of power was my dilemma. And I didn't understand that. And some of the things that hurt me lasted until, you know, I remember when I finally gave up one of the things, I was 7 years in recovery. And I realized that until I stopped doing the thing that hurt me, there was no way that I was going to get any insight on what was happening. It's kind of like until you stop drinking, you don't get any insight on who you are at all, and until you admit your innermost self certain things. So I really like that, and that goes on. And there's this line that most people hear me speak. In fact, Kurt and I were talking about it. It was when I was about same time you are in recovery, Danny. I realized I had a lot of intellect about what this program was about. And yet I also recognized that I had a lot of fear still. And so what you were talking about, Sam, was true. If I fail to enlarge on my spiritual relationship, then I'm not going to be able to face the certain trials and those spots ahead. And the realization of the amount of fear I was dealing with, nobody would have known that because I looked like the ideal AA person at 20 something years or whatever. And yet I started to understand that, when I went to bed at night and I shut the light off, I had to deal with who I am. And I didn't understand how I had so many masks for recovery, let alone what I was doing for what I was drinking. I had a lot of masks for who I was in recovery and how you viewed me and how I was attached to whatever, how I wanted you people to look at me as a person. So that money, property, and prestige is how people look at me. I was attached to that. And it took me almost 30 years before I nearly, where I really feel as though I surrendered to answering to a higher source, not to other people. It talks about that on page 98. As long as my dependence is on others rather than God, nothing's going to really happen. And by then I realized that thing about how I had created a God that was really an extension of me, and it had to do with reason, rationale, and logic. And if I did X, Y, Z, then I should get X, Y, Z. And a lot of things weren't happening that way for me. And I realized as I saw that I had developed that God of reason, that I was the one that was limiting God. It's nothing to do with God, it had to do with me. And what Mary Thayer thought was the right thing to happen. And that's when that line on page 129 opened my whole life for the last 27 years. And it said that this is a limitless love. It's better than gold. It's limitless, absolutely limitless. But we have to mine it for the rest of our lives. That means do the drill every day. And insist on giving the whole thing away. I got to give this all away. And it's going to pay me dividends. And of late, I've been thinking about those dividends. God has given me things I didn't even know I wanted. And people have done things and things have happened for me that I realize that there is a world of the spirit that we enter. And some energy or happening or whatever, or greater power is really here with us. Doesn't mean we're not sad or whatever. Last week, one of my sponsees passed. I knew when I left Tampa, it'd be the last time I saw her. But I wasn't here in Santa Fe. I was down in Mexico getting my teeth done. But it was like, there was a moment where I just sat and I realized where I was and what was happening there. And it became like I was still with her, even though I wasn't with her. There's definitely a language of the heart, and we're in a big family. We really are. I met that woman when I first got to Tampa, and she became like a soul companion. Her soul was so thirsty. She just kept me right on my toes the whole time. She was a wonderful demonstration of a valiant soul. So I'm glad to be here tonight. Wonderful to hear you, Danny. come back over. Let's have dinner or something, okay?
As
Love
soon
you.
as we can fly.
Okay.
You know, there's that the line in there's a solution in italics that said the X problem who's properly armed with the facts about himself can generally win the entire confidence of another alcohol. You know, I think part of the reason was I wasn't properly armed with facts about myself. I'm completely screwed without God. And, you know, then it goes on, it says his whole department shouts out the new prospect, he's a man with a real answer. And then below that, since it has a sincere desire to be helpful. I think I was, geez, I know I need to try to help other guys. I was doing it like a checklist. And it doesn't work. But now I really believe my whole department shouts out, I'm a guy with an answer. And it's amazing to me, the difference, and the people in the fellowship coming up and calling, and it's just, you know, if you haven't, 20 years, I couldn't wake up and drive down the street and go to a meeting. 20 years. And this, I forgot to say this thing about with my mother-in-law when she told me to stop talking about herself. You know what else was a gift from that? I stopped gossiping. You can try, but I'm not going to get involved in it. Just yesterday, a good close friend in the fellowship, they had a intergroup meeting, and he wants it, and I was just silent. I'm not involved in that. And I reckon if you can not gossip after intergroup meeting, you're doing pretty good. But I am a guy who absolutely am armed with facts about myself. And anybody who wants to call me on any of this stuff, and I didn't get into anger, but doing a lot with anger, and I can't do anything. There's one source that can help me with that, and I'm tapping into it. Thanks. Gary, please.
Thanks, Danny. I appreciate that. I was hoping you wouldn't remember me. I was just kind of reviewing the things here that you've talked about and that, and I'm just trying to compare, I guess, to where I was with all of those things after being around this long. And I really didn't want to look too close because I was afraid I was going to be disappointed. But I find myself now thinking about, well, today's a great example. Julie and I are empty nesters, and we're even tired of the dog and the cat. So it's just kind of a different life, and we're doing more things together, and that's working out well. And I really enjoy our life together now. It's us, and we're dealing with what we have. She has a disease it's pretty crippling for her, and I'm trying to help around the house and that. So I'm just trying to stay focused on these one things today. And then I want to sit in a meeting and listen to you and the work you've done in AA and all that. I kind of miss those times. They were fun. And so I just, that's the truth. I really do. 4 of us were on a small Zoom meeting tonight. We ended up talking out on our conduct inventories. And that we were so glad they were so much better today than they were, back in the old days. But I know you've busted your tail over the years and you've come out on the right side of it, and I'm delighted for you. And I know Tom's sorry that he missed you, but thanks again for your talk and allowing me to talk.
Thank you. I see Damien's on the call. Damien, would you like to share?
Oh, he's not allowed to share. Damien, he's on probation. I'm just kidding. What's up, Damien? What you doing, buddy?
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm Damien. I'm an alcoholic. Great to hear you, Danny. And I guess sometimes I just sit here and get blown away by the connections that, you know, and I'm a similar kid, you know, I stole from people who trusted me, and not only money, everything you can steal from another human being, including their peace of mind and trust and love. And, you know, I've been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous probably half my life now, and well, not probably, it is. And there was always something for a guy like me that I was seeking that I could never quite find. You know, I'm in my 10th year of sobriety now, and I found my first real sponsor at 3 days sober, and he took me through the steps, and you know, we had an experience, but he just got sick of me complaining about, like, you know, surely there's more, surely there's something else going on here that I'm missing. And it was actually through people that he knew and his own sponsor that I eventually got hooked up with this whole Fellowship of the Spirit thing. And you know, it happened to me on a tour of you know, Australia that Tom and Anita were doing, and you know, the story, and any of us that know Tom know that he's got more stories than days I've been alive, I think. And he hooked me with the Danny Charlton story. That's how my wife was talking about a trip to Bali they were going to do, and you know, he turned to me and he said, "Well, are you going to go to Bali?" And, "Oh no, I don't fly, and I couldn't possibly leave, you know, my AA area, and I'm too busy and important here." And I got the Danny Charlton story, and you know, God's either in Bali or he's not, and you know, just through that one conversation, something changed. Like we drove away from there, and I was speaking to my wife about it, and I think my wife Cherie, and a few of the other people that were around us had been praying for a little while that something was going to happen in my life at that time, or something really nasty was about to go down, and that's the truth, you know. You know, I wasn't 20 or 22 years or 25 years sober and suicidal. I was 3.5 years sober, and in that state, something needed to change. And you know, just sitting here and thinking, well, and I'm the guy Danny's talking about. You know, we've somehow managed to hook up, and you know, we have the privilege of going through the book together today. And you know, when I hear his stories, and when I talk to Tom, and then we get on you know, a meeting like this, and my screen's on speaker view, and Sam Glenn's sitting there, and this, you know, scared little kid who's never going to travel and never has to leave his home. I mean, I've met the guy in Nashville. You know, how does this happen? How do I feel like I'm connected to someone like Mary Thayer and I've never met her? Because I've literally heard everything useful that's ever come out of Mary Thayer's mouth through my sponsor. How do I feel like I know Don Pritz, and not only haven't I met him, I will never have the chance to meet the man, but I feel connected to you know, all you guys through this Fellowship of the Spirit, that I always suspected there was something going on here that was going to hit me in a spot that can anchor me. I always felt the drift, a little bit out of step, just that there was something happening here in Alcoholics Anonymous that I had to go and seek. And fortunately for a lazy guy like me, it found me. It felt like Tom Ewell was stalking me through Australia. I wanted nothing to do with the tour that they were on. I was part of the planning committee for that, and I did nothing except complain. And it got me anyway. It was quite, well, you can call it coincidence or quite by accident, or an act of God that you know, and maybe it was the power of collective prayer around me that something needs to happen for this guy or he's gone. And, you know, that's been my experience. It's a real pleasure and an honor to hook up with you guys. And thanks for your talk, Danny, and thanks for your honesty.
Yeah, you know what's funny is when when the big book talks about how these words proved to be far more visionary than the intending founders could have imagined. I often think about that. If you're an alcoholic, as we were, we believe there's no middle of the road solution, you know, and good for us because we don't have middle of the road lives. You don't hear a lot of mediocrity going on. You know, these people are either just, you know, head forth into just burning their life down, or, you know, or sponsoring 10 guys and, you know, meditating in the morning and doing this and taking a jail commitment. You know, people who are like me are doing one or the other. And because of that, the fruit of it just is so amazing to see people who are in the middle of the boat, you know, what their lives turn out to be. So at this point, we'll open it up. We have time for a few people who'd like to share. And if you don't raise your hand, I'll just pick on people. So let's call on Lisa Frey from Pennsylvania, because she's right there in my screen. Hey, Lisa, how you doing?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here tonight. I've really enjoyed Danny, and I enjoyed all the people that have shared so far. What I really heard from Danny was a lot of things that I needed to hear. And I really liked what you said about some of the consistent things you hear from people as they share their experience with the emotional sobriety, and one of them being meditation. I've been struggling with that. It's not something I'm very good at. And, you know, I've been talking to my sponsor about continuing to try. And yet I continually hear how that is crucial as part of your emotional sobriety, being able to hear right from your higher power. And I have a problem sitting still and quieting my mind. And so it's just good for me to continue to hear people share when they do that, the results they get and the inspiration they're getting, and it just continues to reinforce that. I have to keep trying, and with God's help, right, I'll get there, but I have to put in the effort, right? And yet I don't want to, because that means I have to sit still. and then what does that say? That tells me all kinds of other things. So everything I needed to hear tonight I heard. And Danny, I really enjoyed your story. And I had a very similar experience with gossiping and hurting people and having to make amends and turning it into living amends. And how when I am really hurting enough with a character defect and I really sincerely reach out to my higher power and help with something like that, how it's given to me, and then how much better I feel about myself as a person and how much more loving I am to other people. Right. And so I really related to that experience as well. So that's all I have.
I think that one of the things I've always felt about meditation and learned about meditation is it benefits the people who are shittiest at meditation. It benefits the most, because that part that's really shitty at meditation needs meditation. So for me, it's like, you know, clock in and clock out. It's like saying somebody who's like severely out of shape who says, man, I just hate to run. It's like, well, no shit, you hate to run. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's the same thing. But somebody told me, like, you clock in and you clock out. So sometimes for me, it was just sit down in that chair. And if your mind goes crazy for 10 minutes, it goes crazy. We're going to try this and listen to this. It's an exercise. Danny, what do you have to say about the meditation thing? How's that work with you?
Gosh, well, just do it. Just do it. Yeah, you know, just do it. It's in the directions. There's a step-by-step process there. And, you know, of course, we can do whatever we want, but just do it. And, you know, I think back to my first 5th step when it said, get quiet for an hour, or be still for an hour. What is it? It was really the first time I took an hour and just took an hour. And I thought it was the most impossible feat. But I believe it began to pave the way for more and more work in that area. Now, meditation alone is, you know, for me, meditation alone, I can't just survive on meditation without doing this other work. You know, faith without works is dead, absolutely. But it's a heck of a gift. And I look at it anymore, I look forward to it. It's a gift that I can give myself. And yeah, thanks, Sam.
That's also funny too. If you sponsor people with a lot of time sobriety and they come up to you and say, hey, man, things are just falling off the rails a little bit. One of the first things I always ask, how's your meditation going? And it always turns out that that's gotten dropped. That's the first thing that gets dropped when people's lives get busy and fast, you know, and they stop meditating. I haven't really worked with a lot of alcoholics. So I just don't have the time right now. I don't think I'm very effective. And shit starts to unravel from there. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny, you know, when you suggest come hell or high water, my suggestion to you is for you to meditate and do it 7 minutes every day. Like, you never get anybody who goes, man, that was the worst suggestion. That was a complete waste of time. I've been meditating 7 minutes a day and just, you know, I've just been asked backwards ever since. You never hear that. You never hear that's the biggest waste of time. You always hear, I can't believe, oh my God, I can't believe what a difference that makes. So anyway, hey, Belinda, we have time for a quick share. I think Belinda's got her hand up, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll be quick. It's a neat, thank you, Danny. That so many people have talked about different ways of meditating, because there's not one way. And I just find that it's just being you can be moving around, you can be walking in a labyrinth, you can be walking the dog, you can be sitting on the side of your bed or laying in bed, you can be in a position, whatever. It's just being open. It's just being still. And it is hard to get your mind still, but that's just what it is to me. And I can't start the day in God's will if I don't do that. If I can't get all my out and just be still for a minute and let something come in, and that's it.
Thanks, Belinda. And right before we go, what about Dave H? Dave, what's up, man? Real quick.
Hey, yeah, real quick. Danny, thanks for your share. And I loved listening to how you've made AA really transform your life. I do have to say that when I first got sober and in my meditation, my mind goes to a beach in Bali where I've been to, and on a couple of occasions now. And in looking you up, I know you from another life. A little bit, I think. And if you're involved with the Lumbai Straits Resort, we will see each other, I hope, soon. My greatest spiritual experiences has been underwater in your neck of the woods. And there's no doubt about it. That is God's world. And it's, you talk about taking an ambassador underwater up there. It's phenomenal. I look forward to meeting you in person at some point. Thanks.
Hey, that's beautiful. Danny, any last words, man? Anything else you want to leave us with? You don't have to.
Y'all come and visit now.
All right. Well, we'll close this up. We'll go to for all who care to join us, we recite the Lord's Prayer to ourselves. Amen. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you.
Good to see you, Danny. That was great, man. Thank you so
Likewise,
much.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you.